Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session F3, the business of biodiversity, getting it on menus, rooting it in agriculture. It is my great pleasure to welcome our moderator, Paul Noonan, who is the director of SDG Hub, as well as the coordinator and founder of the Chef's Manifesto. Welcome to the stage, Paul.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. I'm super excited about this session today. We're going to be looking at the issue of biodiversity and how that connects to business and agriculture. And we've got an amazing panel to come to speak to you today. This work is so critical to the things that we do at the SDG2 Hub and the Chef's Manifesto for a whole range of reasons. And part of it is because our diets are very focused at the moment globally. There's about 30,000 edible foods in our world, and yet only about 150 make up the majority of our diet. And when I found out that only four key ingredients make up 60% of the calories and proteins obtained by humans from plants, we just are using such a small amount. And when you think about it, we work with a lot of chefs, and the chefs talk about the pantry or the larder that they get to work with, and diversity is really what that is. When we're only using such a small amount, we're really minimizing the potential. And when you think about agriculture and you think about some of the issues that we have, some of the opportunities there, agriculture has lots of challenges. If we think about climate change, we think about the environment. At the moment, agriculture is responsible and connected to lots of different challenges in that space. So we've seen up to 90% of crop varieties that have disappeared from farmers' fields. We've seen lots of different breeds of animals that have just disappeared. And so that means once they've disappeared, we don't have access to them. And we also have issues around greenhouse gas emissions and fresh water. And so biodiversity is really critical to unlocking some of the potential for change, because what we don't know is what's in each of those varieties. At the same time, we also have many issues on the nutrition front. And we have people that are everything from going hungry to not getting enough nutrition to being overweight and obese, and what people eat is really critical. And so all of these things mean that biodiversity is a real key driver for how we eat, but also how we grow food and for our environmental issues. And so today what we want to do is have a conversation where we're going to discuss the business of biodiversity, because often it's very easy to talk about these issues and to talk about them in the abstract, but it's until you get it onto the menus, until you get it growing in the farms, often what is grown in the farm will be dependent on what people are demanding. And so there's this kind of connection at the business side. And if you want to drive that large scale change, so you're going to be with us for the next 30 minutes. We do have a chat box, as you know, and we would love to hear your questions. We're going to hopefully have some time for some interaction with our panelists. But what I want to do is I want to welcome our panelists on. Maria and Amy are going to come on screen. And in order to jump straight into it, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask both Maria and Amy. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much. Great to be there.
Great to have you with us. Thank you. So I'm going to ask you guys to just introduce yourselves, because I just think we get straight into it this way. And I'm also going to ask you to just share one of your favorite food discoveries, and then a couple of introductory comments on just why you think this is a really critical topic. So I'm going to start with you,
yes,
Marie.
Thank you, Paul.
So
my name is Marie Haga, and I am Associate Vice President at IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development. I used to be the executive director of an organization called the Crop Trust. And the Crop Trust's sole mandate actually is to safeguard the biodiversity of crops. You're so right, Paul, when you say that biodiversity is really a key to sustainable food production. And when you ask why we are falling behind, I think the reason quite simply is that people don't know enough about it. People aren't aware that seeds, in fact, are miracles. It's amazing what we can do with this natural diversity of seeds, the 1,000 varieties of banana, or the 3,000 varieties of coconut, or the 35,000 variety of corn, or the 125,000 varieties of wheat. Used in the right way, these are miracles, because we can use this diversity through natural breeding to produce more food, to produce more healthy food, to produce food in a way that is more environmentally friendly. We can breed plants so they need less water, less pesticides, less fertilizer. So it's amazing what you can make, how you can make use of this diversity to really changes in the food system that is desperately needed. Oh yeah, and then you asked about my food experience. Yeah, let me say, I'm brought up in Norway, where we eat tons of boiled white potatoes. Awfully boring. It was such an amazing experience to go to the potato park in Peru, 4,000 meters height. They grow 1,200 varieties of potatoes up there. Of course, there is 4,500 varieties globally. But they grow white potatoes, blue, red, pink, yellow, all kinds of colored potatoes. And all have different tastes and absolutely incredible. So when I got only boiled potatoes with all these colors up there in the potato park, it was really one of the most fantastic meals I've ever had. So the humble potato is something that can grow absolutely all over the world, and we should really make use of it to make sure that we produce sufficient food globally in the time ahead.
Yeah, no, I think Marie, that's you've raised one of the important insights around biodiversity, because often we think about biodiversity as just different types of varieties or different types of food. So potato we would group as one, but within potato you were saying 4,500.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got this huge variety, and I think this is where sometimes it's within species of plants we have just such diversity as well, and we can choose different varieties and get different textures. And I know in the food space, some of those kinds of things, there's a lot of room to play there, and they'll grow in different environments and all those kinds of things. So super excited. We'll get more into that. So Amy, please, over to you to introduce yourself and share your favorite food discovery, as well as a little bit of introduction.
Great to join here, and thanks for having me. And I love having Marie go first. I'm just as excited about potatoes, just in general in my life. And so it's great to be here. I'm very proud to be the Chief Sustainability Officer at Kellogg's. So most of you hopefully have Kellogg's products in your pantry, iconically cereal, but we also have a wide portfolio of global foods. And this topic of biodiversity is really an important one for us on a couple different levels. I think Marie really touched on this important piece of around what ingredients we're all using, and the natural biodiversity that we have as across the world, but that we're not fully leveraging as not just all of the environmental and food security benefits that you walked through, but also as a culinary experience that we can bring to life in our foods. And it's something that we've increasingly looked at as not just an opportunity on food security, on sustainability, on security of supply, but also as an asset that we're bringing to bear for our consumers who want, increasingly interesting food, and that's coming from all across the world in terms of flavors and approaches. And I think the other pieces that we think about for my world in biodiversity, it's also like soil microbiome diversity, thinking about cultivation practices that we're doing, that we're making sure we're continuing to invest in the biodiversity of our soils, all the way up to perhaps maybe the most iconic biodiversity, to your point, Paul, of like megafauna, how are the monkeys and the tigers thriving in the world? And so, we're looking at all these different elements of biodiversity, how we as a food company can support maintaining, restoring the biodiversity that's inherent, that we rely on, as well as, what are the things that we can leverage as part of our food storytelling. And so I'll use that to segue to my food story, which is, when I first joined Kellogg, we were just starting our work around sustainable agriculture as a company. And one of the first projects that I got to manage is looking at quinoa production, and looking at how do we incorporate quinoa into our food. We are a corn, wheat, rice, potato company at our core, but we're increasingly looking to diversify the types of ingredients that we have in our portfolio. And quinoa was one of those very first ones that we worked on, and thinking about both the farmer livelihood, which is really core to Kellogg's approach in sustainable agriculture, which is all about people. So farmer livelihood consideration there, as well as kind of soil health. And that thread around ancient grains and discovering new ingredients that we can partner on with farmers all around the world, all the way up till now. Paul and I had a meeting, and we connected with this wonderful chef from New York named Pierre, and he was telling us about fonio and the amazing ancient grains there, kind of always looking for something new. And I think that's the most fun part of my role, as well as, when I think about what's the future of biodiversity for a food company, I think it's that diversity in plant-based foods that we can unlock for consumers.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Amy. And I love that you guys are always, there's a lot often going behind the scenes. You guys are out looking at different crops and thinking about where the future is. And I think sometimes when we think about food production, we think it just instantly happens, but it actually takes a lot of work, a lot of testing and recipe development and production development, and working with the farmers to before it kind of ends up in a bowl at home or in a product. And so good to hear that. We've got one question already coming in from Jonas. We'll come to that in a minute, but I'm gonna jump to you, Marie, and I'm just gonna. So you worked at the Crop Trust. You're now working at IFAD, which is the International Fund for Agricultural Development. So amazing connection between helping protect and build the awareness around biodiversity, and now working with the farmers. And given we know agriculture is so crucial for ensuring the sustainability of our food systems and mitigating climate change in our growing population, can you give me 3 methods small and large farmers should be adopting, and what we can do as business and consumers to support that style of agriculture?
Well, first of all, you are very right when you say that farmers are really one of the most important keys to a healthy food system. And we are far away from that for the time being, unfortunately. I think we basically have a food system in crisis because we don't produce enough food. It's not sufficiently nutritious, and we don't produce it within planetary boundaries, where there's too much pollution as a product of the way we do agriculture. So clearly farmers are key to getting the food system on a better path. And people keep talking about the conservatism among farmers, and of course, to some extent, that is true. We do need to encourage farmers to produce more diversely, to produce more diverse, help us produce more diverse diets, But as you said earlier, Paul, we also need to
Mhm.
keep talking about the diversity in species, because there is also so much diversity that we can play around with there. And I don't think farmers do not want to play an important part in this, but we do got to make sure that they have the knowledge. But it doesn't only help that the farmers have the knowledge. They also got to have the seeds to produce these plants. Clearly, the seed companies have an important role to play. The seed companies can't deliver what the farmers need unless the scientists have done their job. And I think it's fascinating, Amy, that you speak about safeguarding some of the old varieties, because we need also to play around.
Have you frozen? I think you might have frozen,
so.
Marie.
If I can pick up from where
Okay.
she left off there, you know, I think it's you know, for us, and I'll use this as a segue also to Jonas's question a little bit here too. You know, it's a couple of different opportunity territories. You know, we have some very iconic and amazing brands that already do leverage maybe unconventional varieties of seeds within the spectrum of corn, wheat, rice. And that's something that, you know, as I've been with Kellogg for 8 years, and when I'm thinking back to when I first joined, I didn't really realize we had, you know, a company like Kellogg has cereal scientists that are focused really exclusively on thinking about, you know, what varieties do we use and how do we use them. But there's also a component around, you know, innovation, and, you know, as we were mentioning with ancient grains and a number of these new varieties that we're looking at, you know, it's not just a representation of diversity, but in the environmental sense, but a representation of diversity in a culinary sense and a cultural sense. And so how can we bring that to life? So yes, I think, you know, we're really committed to going further in broadening our crop use, particularly as we think about our innovation pipeline, and thinking about our food creation journey differently. And I think you mentioned that kind of pantry that we all have. You know, in our case, very large chefs, and we have our pantry. And so how do we make sure that pantry is inclusive of a number of different things? And there is a lot of work that goes into how can you include something new in a pantry when it needs to be at the scale that Kellogg is in, right? So, you know, there's one thing you can do around how you incorporate it in your home, another level around how a chef might be able to incorporate it into his restaurant. You can imagine the work needed to have that secure supply at a scale like Kellogg has. If you look at other foods, though, within our, you know, we also have foods like Morningstar Farms in our portfolio. So we have a cereal business, which is amazing and very important, and continuing to diversify there. But we also have a business called Morningstar Farms. For those of you who are not aware, it's a North American brand that is focused on plant-based proteins and has been around for decades. And, you know, our founder was super committed to the power of plant-based diets. So in that portfolio, if you take a look at all the different products, you know, the iconic black bean burger, which is still my favorite food that we make, and it has a bunch of you know, veggies and other food, you know, legumes and things in there. And then even more now with, you know, continuing to innovate and think through, even though this is an iconic brand that's been around for decades, thinking about Incognito, which is a plant-based meat alternative that that's launched with restaurants and chefs and coming to consumers really shortly. So I think it's that accessibility piece. So we're definitely driving innovation with it, as well as trying to think about how do we make it really accessible to people.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah, no, I'm going to come back to you. I want to talk a little bit about behavior change and diversifying diets, which is at that other end. But I'm going to come back to you, Marie. We just jumped. You were talking about seeds, and you were talking about access to seeds, I think, and I think that's where we lost you. So, do you want to just? Yeah,
well, I can build on what I started to say, and also what Amy said, because I think what we absolutely need to do is to understand that in order for these food systems to be to be healthier, to put it that way, we got to think about the whole chain, from the farmers and to the consumers, and in between there you have the seed companies. You have the scientists who can help us breed new plants. We can safeguard old ones, and we do have the food companies and the consumers in here. So we got to work along the whole chain. And I am of course encouraged when I hear Amy speak about Kellogg's and their thinking, but it is also a fact that as of now, as you touched upon, Paul, in the introduction, actually 4 crops contribute to 60% of calorie intake globally. That is not sustainable. And the fact of the matter is also that these 4 crops that we base ourselves on are very limited in nutritional value. And they also require quite a lot of input. So it's a long way to go. And I do think we as consumers got to be aware that our choices will lead the way through this long value chain and eventually end up with what farmers have to produce. We do have a big responsibility as consumers, and those who are closest to consumers is the food industry. So they definitely have to be I would dare to say, a more important partner in this in this whole process.
Yeah. No, I think that's completely true. And Amy, I'd love for you to share a little bit from your perspective just around that consumer end, because there's what comes from the farm and the supply side, but there's also what the demand side and what people pick up on a shelf or they order on a menu really drives what farmers will grow. And part of the reason where we do have this kind of focus on certain crops was in order to kind of make food more accessible all around the world. There was a reduction, and at certain points when people used to go hungry. And so now we've got a system. What are some of the tools that you're using from a business perspective to enable behavior change around diversification of diets?
Yeah, well, and I think this is why we're so excited to be here and thinking about this under the lens of kind of culinary and bringing it to life, because for us, often, I'm sure no surprise to any those on the phone, the center aisle isn't necessarily leading the culture change elements. So it's really important, and we're very targeted about thinking about how do we partner with culinary drivers of trends, because we want, just like Marie was saying, we want people to be just as excited as we are about diverse ingredients, but you have to kind of warm people up to it, right? We need to be able to introduce that in different ways. So in our toolkit, it's really thinking about how do we partner with kind of influencers in this space? How do we help talk about the environmental benefits, the social benefits, the nutritional benefits of eating plants, more diverse plants, and kind of sharing that story proactively. It's working with people like you and the Chef's Manifesto who have shared values. And then it's also, how do we introduce it through foods that's an accessible way? So, kale is a great example. I use this because I am not a big kale fan. I can't just eat a bowl of kale, but some people can. That's just not me. I'm not progressive in that way. But it being part of a salad mix, I am there, and I think, I use that as an example because that's how we think about it. Can we shift over to a completely new food format and new ingredients within our, regular offerings overnight? No, both because of a supply chain challenge and because consumer preference. But can we help do line extensions and get people excited about it? That's what started us with the quinoa work. Amaranth, a number of other grains that people had not heard of, we're helping to expose general consumers to those ingredients, talk about the benefits to people and planet for those types of new ingredients, and then it grows into kind of a standalone product, like an ancient grains line extension. And so, those are the things that we do to help continue to evolve. And I think, when I think about who are the people that can drive the most influences and how do we partner with them, it's a lot of like the culinary leaders around the world. And so that's what we're really excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's so critical to sort of introduce people to that diversity. But I think it's also very strategic about what we introduce them to. So you mentioned certain grains, and some of these grains, what people don't realize is not only have they got a better nutritional, benefit for people, they also have environmental benefits. They use less water. You've got things like millets, for example, which most people, they've been parts of diets for many, many years in many parts of the world, but they've been seen as, poor people's food or not seen as valuable. Yet they use often 1/5 of the water of things like rice. And so there's a number of different elements there where you can have that agricultural benefit as well as human benefit. And I think, that idea of people and planet. And it is chefs and culinary experts who are now flooding our media, flooding our social media feeds, our TV, that can really help lead that. And I know the Crop Trust has done a lot there. I know Kellogg's is really looking into that space around how you do that and partner there. We're coming close to our end, and in a minute, I'm going to ask each of you to give a 6-word summary on this session of your takeaways. But I think we've got another minute, maybe.
We're just about at time. So as Paul mentioned, everyone hang on for a moment. I'm going to we'll ask all of our panelists for their top takeaways in 6 words or just details about our upcoming break. As we're going to this 20-minute networking break, on the left-hand side, you will see the networking tab. This is where you can have 4-minute video chats with someone else in the space. So just like you might meet someone at the coffee station at a in-person event. So we definitely highly encourage you to join there. If you're not sure what you're going to talk to someone about, we have suggested a prompt. So how do you shift your consumers' habits, buy more plants or plant-based meat alternatives? Also, we have the Expo tab where you can visit our sponsors to see some great culinary demos, trends presentations, as well as some insightful videos. We also have some Meet the Author booths with several of today's presenters. So hope you will join us there. And then just as a reminder, the more you engage during our breaks, the better chances you have to win cookbooks from our authors who have been presenting. And if you have engaged with us all 6 weeks, you have the opportunity to win a raffle ticket to join us in Menus of Change 2020 in Hyde Park, New York. So Paul, I will let you take it away and call on our panelists for the 6-word top takeaways.
Thank you. So who wants to go first? Who's got their 6 words or less? You can be less.
I can go.
Who wants to go first?
I have more. Plants, good, whole planet. That's it. Those words. And then can I put a plug? Please visit me at the expo.
Diverse, plant.
For people and planet. People, planet.
Absolutely.
Slash.
So if you want to go. Sounds good. Thanks, Amy. Marie?
All right. So what we need to do is, of course, to save a food system in crisis and a global food system in crisis. And then my 3 words are, don't forget, seeds are miracles.
Seeds are miracles. Yes. And talking to somebody a seed scientist, you just learn so much around seeds, and they are miracles. So it is something, hopefully this conversation's been helpful for everyone. And we look forward to, if you want to chat to Amy a little bit more and ask her some questions, please do. Otherwise, really thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, as well as Amy and Marie. Greatly appreciate your time, as well as Kellogg's Away from Home for sponsoring this session. Hope everyone enjoys the break, and thank you so much for joining us.